On this episode, we visit St. Paul, Minnesota. America Walks holds the National Walking Summit. We talk with the chair of the local host committee. We learn about Our Streets Minneapolis. We get the thoughts of a pedestrian advocate. Finally, the deputy mayor addresses the summit. Stay tuned.
We're in St. Paul, Minnesota, talking with Heidi Simon with America Walks. What's America Walks and what do you do for them?
Sure. We are a 20-year-old nonprofit organization that works to make America a great place to walk. So we promote safe, accessible, and enjoyable places for people to walk and be physically active across the U.S. And I'm the Communications and Partnerships Director with the organization.
And Partnerships Director, what's the deal with partnerships?
Well, we can't do this work alone. We work with a network of over 30,000 advocates and 700 organizations at the local, state, and national level to make sure that walking is a national priority. We're just a small piece of the puzzle.
What's been going on in St. Paul this week?
It's the 2017 National Walking Summit. It's our third national conference. We host it every other year, and it's the first time that we've taken it out of Washington, D.C., so that people could really explore a city that's tackling some of the issues that we work with.
Who showed up this week? Who comes to one of these?
It was a variety of people, different backgrounds, over 45 states and 3 countries represented. We ended up with over 620 people at the conference this year, a new record for us.
And when people went out and did some of your mobile workshops around the city, what sort of things did they see that St. Paul and Minneapolis are doing?
We had a fantastic local host committee here in St. Paul, and they really had their fingers on the pulse of what's going on in making St. Paul a great place to walk. So our attendees got to go out and see things like the Rondo neighborhood, which is overcoming legacies of division from I-95, as well as some placemaking and tactical urbanism projects that are going on to really make sure that St. Paul is for the people and for people to be active and walking.
Now, when it comes to walkability, what would the role be for St. Paul? What does the state do, and what happens at the national level? What's the contribution of each level?
Well, I think we saw here this week that each community has a different way of approaching walking and walkability, but each has its own lessons to share with one another and to offer success stories, best practices, resources, and St. Paul's an example of those. And what we are hoping to do is take those success stories back to the national level and demonstrate that need at a broader audience, that this is something that people across the U.S. need to be talking about.
And you're winding up in just a few hours. Yep. People will be heading back to where they came from. What can they be doing over the next 2 years before your next summit and back in their communities? What are they going to bring home with them?
Well, first thing we want them to do is have conversations with people in their communities. Talk about what they've heard here and what they've learned, and go out and start walking their neighborhoods. See what can be improved upon, see what might be able to be highlighted in their own work, in their own communities, and share it with us so that we can share it with everyone else.
We're in St. Paul talking with Jill Chamberlain. Who do you work for?
I work at the Center for Prevention at Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Minnesota.
What was your connection with the walking summit that just ended?
Well, I've had the good fortune of being able to attend the first 2 walk summits. And when they were talking about the opportunity to not be in D.C. and maybe be in another part of the country, I said, hey, you should come to St. Paul. Blue Cross would love to help. And by doing that, I became the chair of the local host committee.
So you've been pretty busy
I've been busy. The folks from America Walks came to St. Paul for a site visit in June 2016, and that's when the local host committee kicked off our first meeting. What was fantastic is that Minnesota culture is very collaborative. I think that's how we all get through the long winters. And so when we said this event's coming, quickly representatives from the city of St. Paul, community organizations in particular, representatives from Minneapolis, and then also some of our colleagues at state agencies like our State Department of Health, as well as our State Department of Transportation, all gave time to come together and talk about how we can meet the goals for America Walks. We wanted to make sure they had a great summit, but also what we could do to challenge our own communities to do a little more, to be a good example about what can work, what hasn't worked, how we've learned from some of our mistakes. And so that was June 2016, and here we are. And it's all done, yay!
So, it sounds like you were doing a lot of work. Well, first of all, whoever's going to host 2019, what advice can you give them from your experience?
Well, I'm keeping a list, but I won't tell you the entire list. The importance of working with your community partners and what that looks like for us. We wanted to do a lot of mobile workshops. We wanted to both highlight some work that we're proud of, but also what are the things that are works in progress. And so a great example, we wanted to make sure people just didn't tour Summit Avenue in St. Paul, which is the street that has all the sidewalks and these big, beautiful homes that are historic. We wanted to make sure people were touring where more people live in Minnesota and where there weren't sidewalks. Or for one example, the Rondo neighborhood, which that's the neighborhood that when Interstate 94 went in, it decimated this vibrant African American community. And it speaks to the resilience of that community that they are advocating for improved pedestrian spaces for community members, saying, wait a minute, this needs to be fixed. And now, after years of pushing, the city and the county and even our State Department of Transportation are saying, wait a minute, how do we make what is a federally funded bridge, how do we make sure that the community's voice is represented? How are we listening to what they want out of that space? And an outcome there is increased pedestrian space for the people who are going to be walking within their neighborhood, inclusion of culturally relevant community art that reflects the neighborhood and not just, a generic loon. I love a loon. I live in Minnesota. It's the state bird, but like what gets more tailored to that community. So we wanted to make sure with the mobile workshops that we were authentically reflecting our community. That takes time, and sometimes on a conference planning schedule, that's harder to do. And so it was really important that the host committee felt that burden as opposed to us pushing our time obligations out onto the community. And so my advice to the next host committee, well, one is have fun in the planning, but two, just take the time to really bring people into the process. It works out much better. I also have some recommendations about spreadsheets and how to track it, but that's not going to keep anybody interested.
Yeah. So what did the community get out of this conference? Mm-hmm. How did you involve average people and,
Sure.
and what's going to be different, next week when everybody else is gone?
I'm going to answer the latter question first. So what's going to be different? I don't know. I have some hopes for what's different next week, a year from now, 5 years from now. So why Blue Cross thought it was important for the Walk Summit to be here and really thought it was a privilege to have the Walk Summit here. When a conference like this is in your home state, you know that so many more local people, both local St. Paul, Minneapolis, but the suburbs, and also from across our state, they're able to be here. You're going to be in Fergus Falls. There are some people who are from Fergus Falls that have been down here. That's a 3-hour trip from the Twin Cities. It's still an effort for them to come this far, but the fact that we get so many people from our state, out of the conference of 600 people, 200 were from Minnesota. They come in here and they have that opportunity both to showcase some of their work. They also have the opportunity to hear from folks in other parts of the country about what they're doing, what's working, what they tried, how they learned from their mistakes. And they take that back into their communities and they start using it. What I am hopeful happens is that this is that springboard for a lot of our local advocates and professionals, the folks who work in planning and public health. They're able to take what they were hearing here and use it to springboard Minnesota Walks, which is our statewide pedestrian plan. And that's a plan that was developed with so much community or local input. And now we want to see, like, how do we make those changes in big cities and in our communities of 1,000 people, that they understand the importance of their sidewalk network, or slowing traffic speeds, or making sure that the new immigrant population is engaged in the community and included in the park space. So we're hoping this summit really is a way to kind of propel people forward a little faster.
So is your organizing committee going to be meeting again to sort of follow up or wrap up? Or?
We are. We will do a formal meeting where we're going to do some reflection on what worked. There's some great successes. We're really pleased. There's several things I would do differently that I know we could do better next time. So we want to make sure we're doing that appropriate or a good reflection, so that's useful for the next host committee. It's also useful for us for the next time a national conference or summit's in town. We're going to do that for a bit, and then we are going to have a little celebration and a thank you, and a big thank you especially to all. There were, I think, over 25 mobile workshops. I should know the exact number, but I kind of lost count. And so many local community members that were giving of their time to facilitate or be part of it as a presenter. So we want to make sure we have a chance to get them together, give a real thank you, give some people some food. I get to buy non-alcoholic drinks, so if you want a club soda with a lime, I can do that. I can't buy alcoholic drinks.
We're in the Twin Cities talking with Ethan Foley with Our Streets Minneapolis.
Hello.
What is Our Streets?
Yeah, we're a nonprofit that works on walking and biking issues in Minneapolis.
And what sort of issues do you take on?
Yeah, we're working on making it safer and more comfortable for everyone to be able to walk and bike in the city. So we work on protected bike lanes, we work on pedestrian safety, we host open streets events, we do walk and bike encouragement programming.
And for some of my viewers might not have heard about Open Streets. What is that?
Yeah, so Open Streets started with the Ciclovia in Bogota, Colombia, and basically it's the idea we closing down major commercial streets that are normally really car-oriented. We close them down on a Sunday, open them up to people walking, biking, and having fun. So we do 8 Open Streets events in Minneapolis each year, and it's we attract out. Last year we had more than 80,000 people come out and enjoy streets in a totally different way.
And how does that change people's thinking about the city when you get to walk down the middle of the street and not have to worry about cars?
Well, we hear that it makes a significant imprint on folks, because a lot of the streets that we're working on have not been closed to cars except for construction in generations. And so people say, wow, I've never felt comfortable being on this busy street before, and this day changed how I think about my neighborhood and what it could mean. And so not everybody has that experience, but a lot of people do, and we think it's really impactful, both in terms of the day of and bringing people together, and they're out walking and biking and experiencing their community, but also in how people think about how they're engaging with their community and how they think about streets.
And you do other sorts of events besides the Open Streets events?
We partner with the city and others to host Minneapolis Bike Month, and we also help support the public schools work around both Walk and Bike to School Day and Bike and Walk to School Day, among other things, smaller events as well. Yeah.
What does Minneapolis need most in the way of infrastructure and things that aren't infrastructure?
Well, on the bicycle side, I would say we need to continue our amazing trail network. We need to connect that into more destinations in a way that people feel comfortable doing that, and a wider range of people than today. So that's why we focus on protected bike lanes. On the pedestrian side, it is a lot about safety, and fundamentally, too many people are getting killed at our intersections. We just a 70-year-old man died this morning after being hit last week on one of our busy streets downtown. And that's happening too frequently. People of all backgrounds, all ages, and we really need to improve that. The city just this week announced that they're joining the Vision Zero movement, and they're setting a goal of eliminating traffic fatalities of all kinds by 2027. And within that, we recognize that that's obviously it's very important and valuable work, but also it's important that we learn from the other cities that worked on Vision Zero, and how are we making sure that we're incorporating equitable engagement, and that the solutions that we're coming forward with are driven by the communities that where they're seeing the traffic fatalities, and that we're being conscious of the conversations we're having around policing when we think about enforcement issues, and thinking about the racial profiling and other things that are at the forefront of a lot of conversations right now. And so those, I think, are really big and important steps for our city. And we can't have 106 people die on our roads every 10 years. That's just too many, and that's fundamentally what we're trying to change.
Now, when the city moves forward with their Vision Zero project, what role will your organization play in that?
Yeah, so I will say that Vision Zero, I think, takes a different shape in in different cities. Ours is very city-driven right now, and we recognize that we need to be able to bring community perspectives into that conversation. And we're also focusing a lot on doing that in a way that's bringing the equity pieces to the forefront. And so we want to make sure that people are aware of the stories of people who've lost their lives and their families, and what's that mean to their community. And we have to personalize it. It can't only be about data. Sure, data is important, but it also has to be about people's lives and understanding the real impact that this has. But again, making sure that those stories are from all types of communities that are in our city, and that's really what we're going to be focusing on.
If I were to come back to visit Minneapolis 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what sort of progress would you like to be able to show me? What improvements would you like to see besides a more complete bike network?
Yeah, on the pedestrian side, we definitely are working to eliminate traffic fatalities. For pedestrians, serious injuries, I think that's an achievable goal within 5 years if we were really working hard on it. That's going to take a number of actions. We know it's not going to be, we're not going to reconstruct every street in 5 years, but downtown, can we make a really significant difference in intersection crossings in downtown so that it feels different in 5 years? I think that that's a really achievable thing, because there are a lot of streets that are going to be redone, and we want it to feel like a place that you're invited to walk and it's safe to walk. And right now it feels like a place that's really oriented to folks driving in and out of the city for work, and we need to find that balance more. And so that's a big thing I'd hope you see as a visitor coming to our downtown, that it feels different, that the traffic's at a slower, more manageable speed, that the streets are more inviting, and that you're not feeling like I have to yield to cars at every crossing.
We're in St. Paul, Minnesota, talking to Daniel Sarasti. What's it like for pedestrians in St. Paul?
I would say that perhaps it's not really that bad, but some areas are more critical. I think the areas that are more critical are the areas in which they are next to major highways. The road traffic volume on highway ramps, entrance ramps and exit ramps, are very high, and that's when pedestrians and bicyclists encounter pretty heavy conflict, particularly in the rush time hours, particularly in the afternoons. And I think perhaps it could be worse for bicyclists, to the point that I get off my bicycle and I try to walk the bicycle, but it's still cars are fighting you. Cars don't allow you to cross the street, not even on a crosswalk. And the city has not done enough. I have been here for about 29 years, since 1989, and crossing some streets is really a challenge. Not that I would say that cars are trying to kill you, no, but cars are not yielding at pedestrians, and some car drivers are a little bit distracted. So the pedestrian environment is not very good, and the same with the cycling environment. Now, as you heard the young man that was here, the interview first, they had these open streets. I think they tried to replicate a little bit of Bogota's open streets on Sundays. It's not exactly quite the same, but and I just had it right. When was that? 10 days ago on Broadway. There's a road called Broadway in Minneapolis, northeast Minneapolis. And believe it or not, Broadway has horrible sidewalks, very narrow, and it has no bicycle lanes or anything like that. And there's some sections don't have sidewalks. And so I ended up riding the bicycle at the right side of the road of Broadway, and the first thing I started noticing was that cars were sticking at the back of my bicycle. I was riding at 10 or 5 miles per hour, and at some moments and times and incidents, there was just the car and me, and the car drivers totally failed to move the car to the left. Even so, it had 3.5 road lanes to move. They slowed from 35 miles per hour to 5 right behind me and right next to me. And sometimes the cars wants to make right turns, but other times car drivers, a small percentage, but you always find them in the trip. They're asphyxiated with the back of the bicycle. So I told the council member, Mr. Ross Stark, what the hell, what is happening with these drivers, and what is happening also with the roads. It's not only a problem in St. Paul, it's in Minneapolis. Now, if you take a look closely, you have St. Paul, you have Minneapolis, they're close together. Then you have Bloomington, you have Edina, Fridley. You have all these cities next to each other, and they're like 40 or 50 cities. So this is a huge metropolitan area, and there's always problems. And again, the major problems are in the major avenues, intersections, and major highway entrances and exits.
So I'm Kristen Beckman, I'm the deputy mayor, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight for 2 reasons. I love St. Paul, and I love to welcome people to St. Paul. And I'm thrilled that St. Paul is the second place, or the first city you've had this conference outside of Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for coming to St. Paul. We love you, come back. It's always this nice. I promise. The other reason I'm excited to be here is I am a walker. I walk every day. I walk multiple times a day. When people call me and ask for networking meetings, they want to get to know me, the work we're doing with the city, I say you have to wear comfortable shoes. And in the winter, we walk in the skyways, and in the summer, we walk in spring, summer, fall, we walk outside. And so I take walking meetings. Walking is how I relate to my friends. We go out for walks, we send the drinks. And so to be here with a whole bunch of walkers is so awesome. So come back again, and we'll go for some of my favorite walks. And I have to tell you a funny story about one of my favorite walks. So you are very close to the Waukesha Bridge. And I'm in City Hall, which is right next door to here. And so on days when it just gets too much in the city and things have been hard at times, particularly around community relations, I walk out of City Hall, across the Waukesha Bridge, and there's a staircase, the spiral staircase that goes down to Raspberry Island. And I can get from my desk to Raspberry Island in a 7-minute walk and have my hand in the Mississippi River. And nothing grounds me more than that walk and that moment with the river. And so when things get too much, that's where I go. And so the mayor got a new chief of staff, and Dana and I work very closely together. And I thought we'd have this great bonding moment. I was like, I'm going to take you on my favorite walk. And we are going to go to the place, like if I go AWOL and you can't find me, here's my secret spot. Now I've told 600 people where my secret spot is. So that's a secret. But I said, so, come with me, and I'm so proud, and I love our park system, and I love our river, and I love walking, and we're walking along. Well, that spiral staircase, if you take this walk, it's great, and it extends out over the river. And so it's a little bit of a scary staircase. I see some St. Paulites nodding their heads. And nothing makes my heart stop more than those texts that I get from the police department that says a pedestrian's been hit. Because something, somewhere, we have failed. We have failed our residents when they cannot cross the street safely, when they cannot go to school, when they cannot go with the 91-year-old is going to a community center. We have our transfer out of your community center. We have to do better by our residents and our community members. And it's people like you who push municipal leaders like me and the mayor to make it better. So I hope you all take everything you can from this conference, that you learn about our Stop for Me campaigns. We now are coming up with a pedestrian plan, and you're a head staff person, and an advocate, an internal disruptor to really push us internally to think about walking and stopping such a car-centric community and be more about our bikes and our walkers. We've had people like Margaret Jones and Jeanette Rebar and Carol and all of those around the host committee who are going to push us, but I am grateful for you. I am grateful for you walkers who push policymakers to think about these things, to think about funding and planning and all of that. I'm very grateful that America Walks. I'm so grateful that you exist, so grateful for the work that you do and the people that you brought together. I'm super grateful that you're here and for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota who helped on the local committee to help bring this to St. Paul. I hope you have a great conference. Thank you for being here. Please come back. We'll go out and walk together.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.